Okay, wonderful. I see we already even have some participants that were ready and waiting for us to get started. So hello, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm going to give just a minute or so for everybody to settle in. You can grab a notebook if you'd like, but this is being recorded, which we'll share with participants. My name is Casey Thomas. I am the Public Relations and Content Specialist at Audience View. And today, I am joined by two very special guests from the Mark Twain House in Hartford, Connecticut. Let's start with Rebecca Floyd, has worked at the Mark Twain House and Museum since 2020, first as the interpreter and then Visitors Services Manager and now Director of Interpretation. Her role at Mark Twain House is to hire and train interpretive staff. And Dawn Veillette Diana joined the Mark Twain House and Museum as Director of Development in March 2022. She has worked in the nonprofit development field for more than 30 years, holding positions at the Boys and Girls Club of Hartford, Eastern Seals Capital Region in Eastern Connecticut, the Children's Museum, and Hartford Stage. She's done, in her words, just about everything in the field, but I will take her word for that. From selling memberships to database management to donor relations. Dawn serves as the board of Connecticut chapter of, on the board of the Connecticut chapter of the Association for Fundraising Professionals and as a member of the Association of Donor Relations Professionals and the New England Development Research Association. So we have a great many things that we can learn from these guests today. For anyone that sees another familiar face, we're also joined today by John Burns at Audience View, who has graciously volunteered to reserve the last 10 minutes of today's meeting to go over using our platform. I know we have a number of non-current Audience View users, so if you're curious to learn more, please do stick around for that. And without further ado, I will pass over to Rebecca and Dawn, and I'll kick us off with sort of a general question, because I know we have three key points that we're looking to focus on today between data utilization, communication strategies, and donor engagement. But generally speaking, could you kick us off by talking a little bit about the day-to-day at Mark Twain House and the tremendous membership growth that you've experienced and what that has been like?
All right. Dawn, you want to go or you want me to go?
Rebecca, you can start.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know the Mark Twain House and Museum, we're in Hartford, Connecticut. It's a historic house museum. And we have been using Audience View since the middle of 2020. I think we did our formal go live in August or September of 2020. And we show Mark Twain's house by guided tours. So we have, up to 20 sort of mini events that are on sale every day. And then we do events that are sort of one-off events that speakers, book talks, lectures. Last night we had just this amazing lecture with a historian and collector of Mark Twain. And that revealed new research. So those are some of the sorts of things that we do at the museum. And people buy tickets through Audience View and our website, and they go on a tour of the house. We offer two different types of tours. They are the general tour and the living history tour. They go through the same building. They're different ways of experiencing Mark Twain's home. And we share stories of his life, his history, the way that utilized this house, his family, and a little bit about what made him famous. So there's kind of that in a nutshell. And Dawn, do you want to talk about membership?
Membership, sure. So we've seen some growth in membership over the last year or so. Last year we had a good year increasing our revenues on membership. Part of that is people coming back out. Part of that is people coming back out. Part of that is there are several things that roll into that. During the pandemic, we extended everybody's membership, so we weren't actually bringing in a whole lot of revenue on memberships at that point. those memberships have all now expired, and you have to pay for your membership again. So yeah, so that has helped. We also are we are being more strategic in how often we're communicating with our members, particularly about their renewals. We do a lot more reminding them of that their renewal is up for is going to expire soon, that kind of thing. We used to, I think when I started here, so I've only been here 2 years. So when I started here, we were sending out, we would do the automated email through Audience View. We would send our own email, and we would send a letter. We are now probably tripling or quadrupling the number of communications now. So in addition to that, we're mailing a whole lot more, both before and after their renewal notice, and emailing as well. So I think just the fact that relying on one email or 2 emails and a letter is not going to do it, because if your email is anything like mine, I see something, it's like, oh, I should have read that. That was from a month ago, and I never got to it. So yeah, so I would stress more communication, more notices. You may think when you're in the work doing it, it seems like that's all you're doing, but for the patron on the outside, they're not remembering that you sent 3-4 emails, so.
That's a very good point. I know certainly I can get nervous about, oh, well, if we bombard their inboxes, won't they just, block us, and then we won't be able to get through it all? So that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I know you touched on the different tools that you used when you first started. What are some of the either reporting capabilities or integrations that you find are helpful with that communicating and segmenting your members, or maybe prospective members?
Okay. The Mark Twain House is using some external support in our marketing email place. And so there's a certain amount of like, oh, these are the new customers that are in our database. We need to get them to the marketing team. But we do use the integration with MailChimp for some of our communications. And I know I'm not sure. I think it's just maybe an import from an export of daily records into QuickBooks. I'm not quite sure whether he's doing that manually or he has an electronic method to do it. And so MailChimp's the only integration that we're using right now. Yeah.
And the education department uses the MailChimp integration a lot to communicate with teachers. We've used it to like survey our members. We're looking at, like, should we go to an online or mobile type of membership card, that kind of thing. So we'll survey our members, and they want their physical cards.
No.
At least our people want their physical cards. But we do want to use it more to do more surveying of our members and our donors as well. Like Rebecca said, we have a third-party marketing contractor, and they use Constant Contact. So I give them an update of anyone we've entered into the system with their new emails, and it's basically an export, off of Audience View. I tend to use Patron Report a lot more than my reports, because I can get things like the alternate emails, things like that. So I want to export every email they have, not just the one that's the primary. So so it gets into our e-blast list, our e-news list. So I do that at least quarterly. If we have something big coming up, I'll run it again and send that off to them to upload into the system. And then if we want to do something special, if we just want to do something to donors, it depends on how big the list is. When we want to like if we want to do an email notification to donors about something, it depends on how big the list is. If it's a small list, if it's a small enough list, I will do it myself.
Second floor, I need an escort, please.
But that's working at the museum.
I thought I turned off all my sounds, but that's the one I forgot. Okay.
But if we want to do something like to to a larger group, like 1,000 people or something like that, we'll use the constant contact, we'll use the marketing firm to send it through constant contact, and then they can filter out who's already unsubscribed. We do have a little problem getting back the other way, you know, like who has unsubscribed on constant, because you can add yourself to the constant contact e-news without going through audience view. You can do it on audience view if you, well, it doesn't automatically put you in, but you can opt into it like when you buy a ticket or something like that. All of our members, if they give us their email, they're automatically opted in until they say not to, you know, that kind of thing. And then we upload that to constant contact on a regular basis. But you can also sign up for the e-news through our website, and it bypasses audience view. So there are people in our constant contact list that aren't in audience view. So, you know, it's hard to know who has subscribed, who isn't subscribed, that kind of thing. So, but when I do a special mailing, like to donors, I'll ask for who are the unsubscribes, and I'll go through and code those into audience view that they have opted out of our eBlast list. So, so at least the current people, we know what their communication preference is, you know.
Okay. I do want to get back to talking about donor communication, but we had a question come in as to whether or not auto renewals of memberships are feasible. Is that a decision that you made to choose not to auto them?
No, we offer auto renewal. We do have several people who do that every year. Yeah. It is an option. And it's getting more popular too, I think. I don't know if you've noticed it, Rebecca, but I've noticed more people doing
Yeah, it's more people. The way we have organized it, thank you to John Burns here for because he helped us do that, was that as members, we are selling it as a donation with a benefits package applied to it. So the way to auto renewal is by clicking to make your donation annually repeat. So we have some people doing that. So we're not using the what's built into the Flex package wizard in the system to send the auto renewal.
Yeah, we're using it as a recurring gift, basically. Yeah. But it is getting more popular, yes.
And then that would then circle back to my question about donor communication. Since then, if that's a donation with the membership as a benefit, in terms of record keeping and receipts and making sure everybody has their tax things ready for tax season, how does that look on your end in terms of utilizing audience view?
Yep. So memberships fall under the development office. So we process everything. We process all the acknowledgments for donations as well as for memberships. So it's pretty seamless. So our development associate Caitlin takes care of all the she's like the membership person. So she takes care of all the membership renewals, reaching out for acquisitions, and also making sure they're getting their tax recognition as well. So there's all, you know, there's a series of letters and how it goes out and that kind of thing. So along with the membership card, the list of their benefits. Yeah.
And John, I think we're using the automated acknowledgement too, so that they do get something automatically as soon as they complete their transaction.
Yeah, we use the automated receipt on almost everything. Like not just events, but memberships and donations as well, like the general donations. Almost just about everything we use the auto receipt, but then we also do a physical letter that's mailed out an acknowledgement letter for tax purposes that's mailed out to everybody.
So you had asked if we had favorite reports. So there's two that I use sort of day in and day out, month in and month out. I love to export the snapshot that Audience View has. That's how we sort of glean through, because like you get, what are the tour times that are most popular? What's the percent that each one is filled? So we use it to see, like, you know, how we're matching up with our expenses. I export that regularly, and it's a real quick way to see which events, how many people came, and how much money they made, and what percent of capacity they were at. And then the other one that I do use my reports daily. We use it for our just like what's in the cash drawer at the end of the day. And I also use the filter function in my reports a lot to say, okay, how many people came from the US? How many people came from abroad? You can just by a kind of a quick couple of clicks, you can narrow down the zip codes that you're looking for, in state, out of state. And so we use that pretty regularly as well. Oh, what's the other one? The other one that we've been inventing, sorry, is as we try some, we've been trying some new types of educational interpretational programming over the last couple of years, where we're doing some like craft workshops and interactive conversations with people that we do sell through Audience View, and those get a lot of repeat customers. So we're able to see if all the people, if this event is generating a new audience, new people who have never been in touch with us before, or if it is generating people to come back.
Have you noticed an impact with those, with the correlation between the classes and the?
We are particularly with like adult crafting is a kind of a new discovery that we've done. We've done paint and sip. We've done a couple of sort of mosaic. The Mark Twain house the interior was done by Louis Comfort Tiffany. So we have a little association with stained glass. And so a stained glass mosaic workshop that we've now sold out twice, and people come back. We do the Mark Twain house is all decorated for Christmas and sort of Gilded Age Christmas during the end of November and into December through December. And so we've tapped into like making the types of ornaments that the Clemens family. Mark Twain's the pen name, Clemens is the family name. Sorry, not everybody may be aware of that in this world.
Thank you for clarifying.
So, and so like the same exact, you can come and make the ornaments that they made, he made with, or his wife made with their children. Mm-hmm. So those have had a lot of success. They fill up, and what we have noticed is they generate new people. Like they may have come for a tour and then they come back to do this craft. So we are seeing absolutely some success with that.
That's great. How about school groups? Do you work closely with, I'm envisioning a lot of field trips coming and kids enjoying taking those ornament classes. And while I'm asking that, this can tie in, Laurel asks about how you price these. I'm assuming by these, she means the classes that you touched on.
Right. So how do we price these? We some of that is changing ever so slightly. The Mark Twain House is making some strategic decisions about what is the threshold for an event, like what are we hoping to earn on that event before we agree to put it out. And so we are looking at what is the cost of materials? What is for ornament making, and there's a certain amount of purchase that we have to do, a certain number of hours of planning that our employees have to do. So we price it pretty much to basically cover the cost of materials. So we'll figure that out. And then with other things like the mosaic class, we're bringing in a professional from outside who has a contract with us to present that and do that craft with people. So we are fixing the price at a point that will cover the cost of that presenter, and if we need to cover the cost of supplies, we'll do that. So the threshold, we are reconsidering prices. Like we might need to put them up a little bit so it goes beyond just covering the cost of that expense, so that it generates a little more revenue. Yeah.
I was going to ask, when you touched on that, if you specify at the point of sale or what have you, to say, price is set to cover cost of materials plus, instructor cost, or includes X number of dollars donation to be able to continue this sort of programming and education series.
Yes. So we'll often put that in the event description. So people, but as much as people read that, and we will also sometimes put in a link or an encourage, like, you can donate just to help support these programs in the future. That is also built as an option through the checkout process if you wanted to add a donation to your ticket purchase. So, yes.
Great. Oh, and Laurel had a follow-up question. What do you consider sold out? Number of people.
So it varies. We have some different spaces. So, like our classroom, we have a classroom space that's outside the Mark Twain House in our visitor center that can comfortably seat about 45 people. But generally, if we're doing a craft activity that you don't want, everybody needs to be able to spread out on a table and do their thing with glue and things like that. So we limit those based on, so it might be 20 people, might be 15, depending on what we're doing and how much space is required and how much time it's going to be. We will set the capacity for that program in audience view and not oversell it. We have another program that's coming up on June 5th. It's very exciting for anybody listening. It is Percival Everett. It is free, or you can pay what you can. And I think it's actually almost full, but I think we're going to stream it.
It is. I had
Yeah,
a book yesterday.
I think we're going to stream it. So Percival Everett has recently published the book James, which is a reimagining of Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And he's been, top 10 New York Times bestseller, all those good things. He was on CBS Sunday Morning a few weeks ago. So we're very excited. He's going to be here on June 5th. And for that, we needed to, go over to that. It's too big to have it in any of our sites. So we're actually having it at a church across the street. So, which can seat 600 people. So we had to go over there and figure out, okay, how many people can we seat in here so that everybody can see? And so we'll just, based on what our needs are, we'll set the capacity. And then we have used a waiting list, outside of audience view, just as people call, we just add it to them in Excel. Yeah. When we can. Does that answer that question?
Yes, I think
Okay.
so. Laurel has a lot of follow-up questions, and Laurel, don't apologize for so many questions. We love it. Okay, so in terms of order of operations, when people are registering, what mechanism do you use what mechanism or program do you use to allow for the pay what you can model?
So Audience View doesn't have a pay what you can function. So what we do is we create different ticket types. We have specifically for Percival Everett, we have a pay what you can 0. We call the next one we chose these numbers as they're all sort of in celebration. The Mark Twain House turns 150 years old this year. So we tried to use permutations of 1, 5, and 0. So for or pay what you can $1.50, pay what you can $15, or pay what you can $150. So that's how we just set it as pay as ticket types in the system, and people are doing all of them. Yeah,
That's great.
probably the $15 one is probably the sweet spot right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an experiment. We've just been doing that for maybe the last few months.
Sure. What's the patron response been like? Have you heard any feedback?
I don't think I've gotten any feedback specifically. I mean, most people do 0, but which is feedback enough. But the few people are sending us some extra dollars our way, so that's nice.
Well,
we get excited when someone does 150.
Right, right. Someone out there knows their 150 can help cover those people paying 0. So
yeah.
We had the reason it's free. It's a series that's sponsored this year, so we had it. It's always free. This particular series, and we just happened to have this incredibly popular topic and person coming, and we're like, man, we probably should have thought a little bit more about that. Didn't realize it was going to be as popular as it was, but that's why we put in the pay what you can feature. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'm sure that's always a tricky balancing act between wanting to bring great programming to as many people as possible and still, cover costs and then some, ideally.
Hey, I have a question about that, if you don't mind. I don't know if you've noticed, have you seen any of your people signing up for free tickets, adding on a donation as part of their transaction?
We absolutely see that. And even with the pay as you can, there were a lot of people I scrolled through, so I know so I don't know the specific numbers of people, but a lot of people did the zero value ticket and then did a donation.
Mhm.
So
That's great.
absolutely people do that. And they're more likely to do that on a free event. But we sell the tour ticket for the Mark Twain House is $25, and people add a donation onto that too, which is very generous.
It's fantastic. Going back to my backlog of questions, when you were talking about your favorite reports and that AV snapshot, and I'm curious how how that has impacted programming decisions and timing and what you offer.
Mm-hmm. So I export it to Excel and I pivot table it in a lot of different ways. Our accounting department also does that. And we use it to say, to show how are we operating in terms of like the number of tours that we're offering day in and day out. Which, by the way, the tour operation is the biggest thing we do. That's what most of the tickets are sold for. And most people who interact with this museum at all are going on a tour of Mark Twain's house. And I think it's like, I don't know, 89% or something like that. Oh, but we'll use it. So in the number of tours that we offer day to day and seasonally will ebb and flow. When we know February is a slow time, we don't put as many staff on, we don't offer as many tours. But a Saturday in July, a Friday in October during leaf peeper season, those are very busy times. So we'll adjust. But we're also looking at it a little more strategically. We're putting up 18 tours a day, but some of them aren't going at all, and they're only at 10% capacity or something like that. They're not filling. So we know we can choose to give fewer tours and hope that they will be at closer to capacity. So we're making some staffing decisions based on that. And one of the things that we're looking at, we are always in a place with like selling tickets online versus the people who they're never going to look at a website. They're just going to assume that they're going to be able to come in and go. And so we're about half and half of people who buy a ticket online in advance and people who they never looked at anything and they walk in. So maybe it's just those walk-ins are just a little less than half. And so we are always trying to tread a balance between making sales available in advance to sort of pump up that online purchase so that we kind of have an idea of how busy the day is going to be. But we know we also don't want to just turn people away. So we don't put every single tour we could possibly give on a day up for sale weeks in advance. But we're using that snapshot and that capacity to say, we're going into June. We know it's going to be busy. We know that the most popular tour times are between 11 and 2. And so we're going to try and maximize the number of tours that we put available for sale so we can, hopefully sell more online tickets.
Sure. I think you may have just answered this, but someone asked, do you do goal setting based on past attendance and capacity and how you use that data to set budgets and forecasting? So
yeah, we absolutely use Audience View that way.
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing that we do in development when it comes to our events is I've color coded some of the categories, some of the patron categories for key people like board of trustees, former board, volunteers, that kind of thing. And I have them show up and then it shows up on when you go to look at an event and you look at who's coming, like the who's coming screen. So you see the list of people, it'll show you like, this is a staff person, this is a board member, this person, I really look at who donated in the whatever last year or whatever, something like that. A lot of times for these events, if I see someone key, if I see a good donor or a donor prospect or someone we want to connect with, I'll either tell our executive director if he's planning on staying to like go and say hello, or I'll go over and say hello before the event starts. So I use that a lot. Like I'll go into whatever author event or whatever we have going on that night, and I'll look at the list of who's coming. And if there's somebody key, I will go over and say hello. Yeah.
Yeah, we use that same function when people are checking in for their tour.
Yeah.
You can see that too, and say
Yeah.
like, "Oh, thank you for being a donor. We really appreciate it." Yeah.
That white glove service makes a
Yeah.
difference. Back to this other question that I hope I understand. How far in advance do you put the tour? So you had touched on not putting every single tour that you could do up
Yeah,
for
we
sale.
struggle with that a little bit, and that's partly because of our own operation is that we do our schedule monthly of who's going to be on working. And so the number of part-time staff who may be on to give tours on any one day may vary from 3 to 8, depending on the season and what's happening. So, so we had decided that, and summer months, we may extend that out, but basically once we set the work schedule for June, we then put all of June up for sale, and we'll probably do that by the end of this week, just to give you an idea. So it sort of rolls from month to month. For the summer, because we know we're already getting calls like, I'm going to be in Connecticut in August. So we will probably extend that out. And we have like a template of like specific times that we always just put up, unless we know there's like a school field trip coming, that are available farther in advance.
All right. Can you track trends within the platform to identify what works and what doesn't? And how does that factor into tracking ROI when including staff time and cost with revenue?
Okay, so that we use Audience View it's an export where then we're doing a pivot table and some analysis. None of that happens inside Audience View. It's we're using all the data that we collected in there and then looking at it outside for analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Because like we don't our accounting department will, I say department, there's one person. He'll look at it and he knows how much it costs for all of our staff to turn on the lights for the day, for the security guards, all that stuff. So and then he reports out on that monthly for all of us.
And I think Laurel just had a quick follow-up on her things about how does someone add a donation when they're buying a ticket. It's how that fundraising campaign is set up. There's where it shows. So box office is like your behind the scenes kind of thing, your internal kind of thing, but there's also web checkout, and then there's another checkout. And
yeah, there's box office checkout.
Yeah, it depends on which ones you have checked will depend whether it shows when they're checking out of their ticket, their sale. Yeah.
I would say we have hundreds of campaigns. Hundreds. Yeah. So, and so the ones that we put up there are sort of the general, like support the Mark Twain House and Museum, and maybe one other one that sort of we're pumping out to people for any period of time.
Yeah. Like our special collections funders. That's
Yeah.
going on. Yeah. We do that every year. So it's like whatever the one that we're doing right now is up there. So that kind of thing.
So you have campaigns that are only used on the admin side, don't necessarily have a web presence.
Right. Yeah.
Great. Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Laurel is also asking, how do you approach running programs for other cultures and different languages, if any?
That is something we struggle with. And we're not using Audience View in any way for that. So everything in Audience View is in English. I don't know if there's options to change it. I guess in Google you can maybe change how your screen appears. But we are working on, in our exhibits, we have 2 gallery exhibits, having a QR code that takes you to a translation of the exhibit labels into Spanish. And then for the house tour is spoken by a real person in English. But we have a summary of a little bit about each room that we have translated into multiple different languages. There's a wonderful foundation called Catch a Fire that exists in Hartford. I don't know if it exists anywhere else, but we're power users, and what they do is you can submit a project. Say, I want to translate this document into Turkish, and you submit it as a project, and they will find somebody out there in the world who would like to volunteer to do that. A native speaker or somebody whose job is translating, and they're in the Catch a Fire database as somebody who's willing to donate their time to do that.
That's great. Great service. Someone is asking, what are some of the lessons learned when tracking data trends that have really helped you change the way you design programs?
Ooh, Dawn, anything?
Hmm.
Okay, because I'm sorry, I don't want to be too much of a yacker.
I know. I'm thinking more about along the author programs, you know.
Yeah, and the virtual versus in person.
Yeah.
So, and we, you know, as many institutions did, we sort of had to reinvent ourselves in 2020 and 22 and 23, 24. But when we started doing things virtually, which was unheard of for us to live stream programs, and we had this vision that it would broaden our audience, you know, that people could log in from anywhere in the world, like they might be for today. They could, we could drive a visitation in some way, even though it was virtual. We could maybe drive donations. And so we did 2 years, 3 years of probably sometimes 3 virtual programs a week. I mean, it was just,
No, sometimes we had 2 a day.
yeah. And, you know, we were finding sort of, I mean, we did 3 programs about Prince, that Prince, the artist, formerly known as Prince.
Formerly known as.
Yeah. And which had very little connection to the Mark Twain House and Museum. Hundreds of people came to each one, but they were all one-offs. They weren't building a relationship with the Mark Twain House. They were Prince fans. And so we did lots of really interesting things, but they weren't necessarily things that were sort of building our brand, our themes, our mission. And we wanted to really see what was happening. Were we serving an international audience? Was it building donations? Were we really doing what we thought we would do by starting the series? And we did have help on this analysis. So we did seek a grant to help us, but we made sure, because some of that virtual stuff, before we sort of figured things out for about a year, it was in a platform called, what was it, John? Crowdcast. Yeah. And so, which was this place that was aggregating data in a completely separate place. So one thing is that we started to reach out to the import crowd at Audience View. We exported all those people who were in this other system, and we imported them into Audience View with that sales history for all those virtual programs, so that we had everything in one place. And then we used a data. There were people who specialize in marketing analytics that we got funded by a grant. And they basically took our entire Audience View database and figured out some of these statistics, that they were, you know, most of these hundreds of virtual programs that we did in this span of time, most people were only going to one. And they weren't necessarily creating repeaters. There were some repeaters, but certainly not. And they were on an average, maybe a donation, I don't know, like only 6% of them were making a donation. So it really changed how we're going forward with planning those. And number one, what we put out there, what we're putting our resources behind. We really want to make sure that it's something that is helping to build a committed audience out there that's going to come again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helping on the development side, because now I can get information as to, like, how many times did they come to for acquisition, for new donors, for finding new donors. It's like, who's been coming multiple times to an event, to our programs, to our author programs, as opposed to one-offs. You don't want to solicit the one-offs, because they're not gonna you know.
Right.
They went to the one thing they were interested in, and that's it. So, you know, but someone who's come 2 or 3 times, yes, they're a donor prospect. They're some sort of prospect, you know, either a member prospect, a donor prospect, or something. Yeah.
Mhm. And you touched on this a little, but I was wondering when you mentioned the grant, in terms of that, I imagine you apply to many grants. Are there tools or reporting features in Audience View that make that process a little easier?
I would say so. We use the checkout question quite a bit. For a long time, it was just how did you learn about us? But now we're required by a number of funders to be able to provide at the end of a month, a week, a year, how many, what are some demographic statistics about our visitors that aren't just anecdotal. So we're required to ask, you know, what's your ethnicity? We're required to ask, you know, I guess that's the, yeah, cultural, ethnic,
Mhm.
race kind of question. It is not required. I mean, it's required that we ask it. It is not required that people answer it. And the grant even told us specifically what categories to include as possible options. And then there's an other, like you can enter your own. And so we export that and aggregate that and use it for grant reports. Absolutely. Also, we're in Hartford, so a lot of our grants for school programs specifically are for Hartford students to attend our programs either free or at a steep discount. And so we need to be able to track exactly how many students came and what that cost and what that grant paid for.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I think that would tie into this next question about group sales, school groups. What do you find most useful in Audience View for managing and growing these options?
So we have experimented a lot with that in our time using this tool. So since we know we need to know that what the name of the school was, what the students did while they were here, because we have a collection of things they can choose from. We need to know their grade level, which there isn't a field for that, John Burns. So so we need that. And so basically what we do is we enter the order as the school's name with the teacher as the contact, and we build that event time in, put in their reservation. If it's a school that we know is grant funded, we just say it's 25 kids at zero as a $0 ticket. And if we also use that naming of ticket type functions to say it's a school visit and 22 of them did a house tour, or it's a school visit and 25 of them did a house tour and a certain activity added on. And the activities we use just inside for us, because we're not booking our school groups online. It's all done by a phone call, and then we're entering into Audience View because there's too many questions and too many variables. And so we use the ticket type feature so that we can get a readout every month of how many people did Growing Up in the Gilded Age, how many people did Clemens Family Chopped, how many people did sketches, new and old. So and that is reported out in all of our grants as well.
Great. I think unfortunately this is our last question before we hand it over to John to look at the demo. But so this question is asking about how you have how if you have changed your communication strategies based on that change in visitors post 2020 data. Am I asking this correctly? How have you leveraged the change of visitors post 2020 to alter your communication strategies based on data?
I don't know. It's a work in progress.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we are reevaluating our marketing strategies right now.
as a marketer, that's a moving target. So
Yeah.
that's the best any of us can do.
Yeah, I'd say, this business like that Dawn touched on with like exporting and the outside firm. And so we don't have any idea how many people are clicking, how many people are reading, we get some feedback on how many people are opting out. But that's one of the things that we really need to have an internal conversation about. And we are having that conversation. Yeah.
I think this is a follow-up from the same anonymous person, so I'll ask it. I think it's, do you feel the visitors have changed since doing a lot of those virtual events in 2020?
That's a good question.
It is. I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, and the demographic for the in-person visitor has not changed overwhelmingly since that time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, it was just a matter of, it was kind of like waiting it out. It's like, all right, the local people are starting to come back. The national people are starting to come back. Now the international people, they're starting to come back a little bit.
Yeah.
The international visitors. Yeah.
Yeah, I say we it's not part of audience view, but we use the post-show email feature to say, hey, thank you for coming. And then we have just a Google form that we insert, like, take a moment to give us some feedback and click this link. And then, so that is also collecting some demographic data. So we're getting it from two different places in two different ways.
Well, that 48 minutes flew by. Thank you so much for your thoughtful answers. I learned a lot. I hope the rest of our attendees did as well. I wish you nothing but continued success. And I wish I lived a little closer to be able to go to that mosaic class and the Christmas ornament making.
Oh, it is fun. Yeah.
Sounds like a blast. Well, I think at this point you can both feel free to hop off, or if you're curious to see what John has to say. But otherwise, I'm going to turn John Burns into our co-host and hand over the keys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And actually, before you leave, guys, I just want to say I have been loving this meeting because, it's been several years. I'm involved in the signing up process and maybe the onboarding process, but it's so heartening to hear that you're using the tools these years later, and things like the patron categories on the attendance list and your snapshot, to see how you're using them, now that you're up and running for a few years. So thank you for all of that.
I would say, John, we met almost weekly for a few months.
Yes, we did. We
Yeah.
did. So, and I kind of miss it. So,
me too.
Yeah, it's good to see you today.
You did too good of a job, John.
Well, speaking of doing a job, I only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to share my screen and get started if you guys don't mind. And I'm hoping to go through. I'm just going to do some basic consumer processes, because I think they give a sense of what you can do underneath the hood. And as always with Zoom or whatever meeting tool, I always have to move the toolbar around. But anyway, so I'm sharing my screen, and what I have up here is can you see my screen first of all? Could someone just confirm?
I can see it.
Okay, great. I've got the Arcade Heritage Museum. This is a made-up website that is a museum of arcade games. And so all of our clients maintain their own websites. And then, of course, everything that's built within our platform generates pages that you can link to. They could be calendars of events. They could be fundraising pages. I'm just going to click through and buy a ticket to an event. And there's different things. There's just the museum admission, we have a lecture series, we have class, and we have a kind of a special virtual reality tour I'm gonna buy today. So I'm gonna click this link, and you'll notice the URL has changed, and what we're loading here is an event page that our software has generated. And so This page, I always like to mention that our pages are responsive so that regardless of what size your customers are browsing on, we're going to create an interface that is attractive and easy to navigate. Notice I can see which events are sold out, but I'm going to go back to the full screen version. But when I pick an event, I want to mention, I notice I've got 2 different price levels available, an adult and a student. Also, I have different entry times if our access is limited. Different days can have different schedules that are available. Also, notice I have a promo code link and a member benefit link. So we put those right on the event page where you're grabbing your tickets. Also, we have that link in our header up here. But so if I were a member, it's prompting me to log in so that I'll get my member benefits. Might be a discount, might be access to member only events. And of course, if I knew a code, also I want to mention these only appear if there is a discount code for the event I've chosen or if there is some sort of a member benefit. So I'm just going to grab a couple of adult tickets and a couple of student tickets, add them to my cart. And I'm going to get a choice about whether I want to add more events or check out. I'm just going to go ahead and check out. Here is my cart page. I've got the tickets on the right that I've chosen. There's only one delivery method available for this event, barcoded e-ticket, so I don't have to make a choice there, but you can, of course, have different delivery methods but one thing that we talked about or they mentioned is we have an add-on donation that's available. So notice it's prompting me to add on a donation. And so when I do that, I get marketing copy, I have suggested amounts, I have frequency options. All of these can be customized. So I'm just going to put a one-time, I'm feeling generous. I'll put a $75 donation in my cart. Notice I can also put in a recognition name. And if my company had matching benefits, I could include that information. So I have to move my toolbar. I'm going to add that donation to the cart. Also part of the checkout flow is if there's some product you would like to sell online, you can do that. I'm not going to add the product at this moment. I'm going to continue on and I'm going to put in my customer information. So I'm letting my browser populate this form, but for everyone who buys online, we're capturing their name, their physical address, their phone number, their email address. We don't require that they create a password. In general, if they're just buying tickets, we're just capturing their information. We do, however, use their email address as a unique identifier. So if someone makes multiple donations or purchases over a matter of months or years, we're going to be developing that customer history that Dawn mentioned that she pulls data based on that. So I'm going to continue. And of course, people can create passwords anytime they would like. If they were members, they actually asked to create a password so that they can use their member benefits. Here is an example
Do you
of
mind
those.
if I interrupt you
Yeah,
briefly for a question
sure.
that came in?
Uh-huh.
Is the online store also powered by Audience View in this instance?
In this instance, it is. I do want to, since in response to that question, I want to mention that our product functionality is not sophisticated. We don't have any inventory control, but if there is product that that might be available, and it might be something like an add-on drinks package or a refreshment package to whatever event I've chosen, yeah, uh, it is powered by our software, but like I say, it's not terribly sophisticated. Here is an example of a checkout question, and you can have more than one. Different questions can be targeted to different fundraising events. So they're very customizable. This is just a general question. How did we hear about this? So I'm going to say social media because it's how I hear about everything, it seems like. Now I'm going to be asked for my payment information. And once again, I'm letting my browser populate this form, but we are PCI certified. We go through annual certification. We have a couple of opt-in boxes. The first is controlled by the client. Well, they're both actually controlled by the client, but the first one is optional. It's an opt-in to receive marketing materials. It has its own privacy policy that you can publish. The second is that I have to agree to the terms and conditions. And once again, these would be your terms and conditions. You can edit these to be what you would like to be. My order button has the amount I'm spending. So I'm going to process that order and put my order through. So here's my confirmation page. Notice I have some additional information that I've included on this page. And so different events can have different confirmation information. And it could be images, it could be sponsors, it could be, we have clients that sell ads to local restaurants. And then of course, here are my barcoded e-tickets. When my order went through, hopefully I received a confirmation email, and go back to the top of my email box. And so here we go. We have my confirmation. It also has that additional copy that was on that confirmation page. It has a PDF attachment of my tickets. It details what I've purchased. I also received a separate thank you email for my donation. And once again, this can be formatted. It can work as a donation receipt. Also, the delivery method can be customized. So we have a lot of clients that if someone donates $100 or less, they send the thank you email. But if someone donates more, they would rather send a physical letter. And we can manage both of those flows. We can generate those letters. So that's the basic purchase flow. Quickly, I just want to look at a couple other things, because we talked a little bit about memberships. And so on this donations page, this is a page our software has generated with the public-facing fundraising campaigns. And so here's that Support Us campaign that was offered as part of checkout. I also have a membership campaign. Also, each of these campaigns has its own unique page, so I can link directly to this page from my website. So we can attach some sort of a ticketing benefit to a donation. I've got a 3-tiered campaign here, and the size of my donation is going to determine what level of membership I get. And this is something we talked about as well. I can make this an automatically reoccurring donation. Actually, in this example, my only option is to make it an automatically reoccurring donation. You can give them a once only or yearly option, but I'm going to put in my confirmation, my recognition name. But that is up to you. So, and of course, people who have reoccurring donations, even if you don't give them the option to make it a one-time only, they can always manage their own fundraising themselves online. The nice thing about this is that once that donation is in my cart, it immediately recognizes me as a member and I can start using it. And notice I've got a link here. If I want to add some events, I can just click here. And when I do that, it takes me to the calendar of events and it lets me know which events have a member benefit. In this case, they all do, but they don't have to. And so if I wanted to just buy, say, a general museum admission, I can just click through, pick my day, and notice it's giving me my member price right here. And Level Up Supporter is the level that I joined at. So, once that is in my cart, I can immediately start using my membership. The other thing I want to talk about is very quickly, and I only have a couple of minutes and that's all I'm going to use, but we can also work with you on subscriptions. So I've got a family pack. We have a lecture series, and I've got a package that allows me to pick 3 of the lectures. And when I put that in my cart, I'm going to buy a couple of tickets because I don't like to go by myself. But here are the different dates. I can pick 3 dates to go, and then I can add that to my cart. And so I have booked the 3 lectures that I want to attend, and the rest of the checkout flow is going to be what we've seen before. We also have what we call a flex package. Here are 4 tickets that I can use however I would like, and so I can work with it in that way. I think that's pretty much my time. Thank you for giving me these few moments, and Anything else that before we go?
No other questions came in.
Great.
I'll stall for like 3 seconds, but John, thank you so much for joining us to be able to run through that. That was
My
really
pleasure. My pleasure.
all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Keep an eye out for more webinars with Audience View, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.